They called that. If you saw our previous show against and their tight ends, like they all did definitely monsters. They're like they can go 0-7.
All right, what's up, everybody? We're the Talking Hats. I cut our intro short there because we're kind of pressed for time here. As y'all know, Zoom will cut us off at the 40-minute mark. But we are joined by my good friend Tim, who actually went to the '91 Super Bowl in Minnesota between Washington and Buffalo. So we're going to kick it over to him to tell us his experience going to the game, what he thought of the game, and all that, and just reminisce here. So Tim, the floor is yours.
Well, I feel very fortunate that, one of the things I wanted to do on my bucket list was to go to a Super Bowl. And I was able to go to that Super Bowl, a one-day round trip, basically. Got to Dulles Airport at Sunday morning at 6 a.m., got home on Monday morning at 6 a.m.
Nice.
For under $1,000, I got a round-trip ticket, a ticket for the Super Bowl, transportation to and from the game, and a brunch at a nearby hotel on the way over to the game.
Nice.
So, nowadays I think it would cost over $2,000 just for the ticket.
Easy.
Forget about the airfare and everything else. So, yeah, I got that off my bucket list at just the right time. And, of course, it was my favorite team playing in the game, and they won. So, that's probably going to be my one and only Super Bowl. But one of the things I remember when I got to Dulles Airport, I met up with my group, the travel agent that I bought the ticket from, and her group. And what she was talking about when I got there was how she had spent all Saturday afternoon fielding phone calls from people who had booked their trips through the Mark Mosley travel agency. Of course, Mark Mosley being a famous former kicker for the team. I think he thought he was going to get more tickets for the game than he ended up getting. And so he had to tell a bunch of people that, you've got your airfare into the Minneapolis and you got your hotel and everything else, but we don't have a ticket for you for the game. So those people were scrambling, calling anyone they could think of to call, including my travel agent. So she spent all Saturday basically fending off phone calls from Mark Mosley customers that could not get a ticket for the game, but were already booked to fly out there and stay there for the weekend.
Out of curiosity, what flight did you guys fly? Was it Delta, United?
I have absolutely no recollection
Pan Am.
at all.
Pan Am, that's right.
I do not remember what airlines I flew. So
because I was a young kid at that time. I was like 9 years old, and I remember this is the first time the Super Bowl ever happened. Say again?
I was 11.
I was 11. Yeah, it was. I think it was like the first.
Well, it was 92, so I was 12 by that point.
Yeah,
it was January 92.
1 year older. It was the first time the Super Bowl has ever happened in a cold weather stadium since.
Was it?
Yeah, I mean every Super Bowl before.
They had played one in Detroit a few earlier.
Oh, okay.
At the Silver Dome when San Francisco played the Bengals the first time.
Yeah.
So, but believe me, we didn't spend much time outside when we got to Minneapolis. It was the actual temperature was like somewhere between 0 and 10, and the wind chill was, I'm sure, below 0.
Was there snow on the ground?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. It wasn't snowing at the time, but there was definitely snow on the ground. And I just, when we got to the stadium, I walked around for about 5 minutes, then hustled inside to get out of the cold. So
the game day experience itself, when you got to the stadium, were there like a whole bunch of props and stuff around, or because it was so cold, did they even bother with that?
Well, one thing I remember seeing outside before I went in was a group of protesters protesting in the name of the Redskins team.
Oh, wow.
So even back then, they were alive and well and fighting to get the name changed. And
there's a big native
later,
population
they finally got their way. But that's really about the only thing I remember from outside the stadium. Yeah, you guys mentioned your age. One of the reasons I ended up going really was I was about to turn 30 at the time. My birthday was just a few days after the game. And right after the NFC Championship game, a guy you might remember named Glenn Brenner.
Oh, yeah.
The famous sportscaster, probably the best local sportscaster ever. He died from cancer. And he was 43 years old. And so I remember, feeling really bad about that and thinking, wow, obviously there are no guarantees in life. And, I'm about to turn 30. Who knows how long I have? And if I want to go to a Super Bowl, and particularly if I want to see my team play in the Super Bowl, I better take advantage of this if I can, because, Joe Gibbs may not be around a lot longer either after this. And who knows, I saw the Packers, they were a dormant franchise for 30 years after Lombardi retired. Right. So, and Joe Gibbs was our Vince Lombardi. So, so I made a point. I maxed out a credit card to make that trip happen. But
at that time, did you think that would be it at that time? That they would never go back?
Like I said, for some reason, the Packers came to mind when I thought about that. And and in 1991, they were still, this was before Brett Favre and before Mike Holmgren. I mean, they had been in the wilderness for, 25 years at that point.
They still had the Magic Man.
Super Bowl.
So,
yeah, I mean, the Redskins had not been a very successful franchise until, George Allen came along and turned them into a winning team. But Gibbs was the one that took them over the finish line and won championships. So, not every franchise gets coaches like that on a regular basis. Obviously, we have not since Gibbs left. And even when he came back, he wasn't quite up to what he had been the first time around. Although when you look back on it now, the fact that he took two teams to the playoffs in 4 years, that's remarkable for this franchise, during the last 30 years. No other coach has taken them to the playoffs twice.
Nope.
So, I mean, Gibbs was, he was magic for this team. But, so I got to the stadium and I went inside, and unfortunately, back then you didn't have digital cameras like you do now. And so I had bought two of those little Instamatic Polaroids. It each took like 20 pictures, I think. So I was limited to taking 40 pictures at the Super Bowl. Today I would have taken 1,000.
Right. Yeah. Easy.
Just technology.
I take 2 pictures of everything just in case one of them doesn't come out right. So.
Gosh, you said Polaroids. So, like old school memories about the.
What's that?
Like when you said Polaroid, it just brings back so many memories of like the old school photos and everything that we.
You have to take your film in to be developed and all of that. So,
a lot of people don't remember that. Like we used to have like throwaway cameras. You're like, what is throwaway cameras? What is like?
That's what I had. I had 2 of them that I bought I think I bought them either at the airport or at the stadium. For whatever reason, when I flew out, I hadn't even thought about getting a camera to take pictures. Right. But so I did manage to get 2 rolls of film from the Super Bowl, which is somewhere. I don't know where it is right now, but I know it's somewhere.
Where were your seats?
My seats were in the end zone.
Wow.
It was the end zone where, pardon me?
I said, wow.
Oh, yeah.
This wasn't a big stadium. It only seated 63,000 people. So there was a great demand for tickets for this game because Buffalo and Washington were clearly the 2 best teams in the NFL that year.
Yeah.
And a lot of people thought Buffalo had a good chance of winning because the year before they had lost on a last-second field goal miss by Scott Norwood. Otherwise, they would have come in as defending Super Bowl champions. Yeah. But yeah, and I was concerned going into that game. I was just, I could never get over the Raiders Super Bowl. where we were also favored, but just showed up where we really didn't show up for that game. And got blown out. So I was concerned, the Redskins had a fantastic season, but, Buffalo was a very talented team. I mean, they had a lot of future Hall of Famers on their roster. So, I was,
what was your favorite play in that Super Bowl?
My favorite play?
Yeah. What was your favorite play?
I watched the game again last night in preparation for this because I wanted to remember how everything had unfolded. I mean, in terms of how it affected the outcome of the game, I would say the touchdown pass to Gary Clark in the third quarter, that was in my end zone where I was sitting. So that was good. The Redskins scored 2 touchdowns in my end zone in the third quarter to pretty much put the game away. But we had jumped out. We were up 17-0 at halftime and had totally, controlled and contained their offense. Although, again, when I watched the game last night, you're reminded of how many times, a few plays here and there could have changed the momentum of the game. Buffalo really missed out on some golden opportunities in the first half. Players dropping touchdown passes. Good, like Don Beebe was a very good receiver. He dropped at least 2 or 3 passes in that game that could have given Buffalo momentum going into halftime. And then, of course, Andre Reed at the end of the first half, they threw a pass to him. Whatever the Redskins Edwards was that year, number 27. Can't remember his name. He had 2 interceptions in that Super Bowl, but on this particular play, he literally climbed over Andre Reed to try to knock the ball away and pretty much, took him to the ground while the ball was still in the air. And the referee didn't call anything. And Reed got up and looked around, and then he started jumping up and down. And then he took his helmet off and threw it on the ground, which got a 15-yard penalty and took them out of field goal range right before halftime. So it was stuff like that really, everything worked out for us that day. Unlike the previous Super Bowl I was thinking about with the Raiders, where everything that could have gone wrong went wrong for us that day. And and you look at scores of some of these games and they look very lopsided, but 1 or 2 plays here and there, you'd have a totally different game momentum wise, which would clearly affect the outcome of the game in the end, in all likelihood. But my favorite play was after, because the Redskins intercepted a pass right off the bat in the third quarter. First play of the third quarter, Jim Kelly drops back, and apparently one of the Redskin assistant coaches drew up a blitz play on the bus over to the stadium for the game, and he showed it to Gibbs, and Gibbs said, well, if the right situation comes along, we can try that. And they used it on this first play, and I forget who blitzed, but I mean, the guy had a clear path right to Kelly, and Kelly had to just dump the ball over the middle, and Kurt Govea intercepted it and ran it back to the 2-yard line, and Gerald Riggs walked into the end zone on the next play for a touchdown, made it 24-0. At that point, you're thinking, well, this game's going to be a blowout. We could win, 45-7 or something like that. But unfortunately, Buffalo came back after that, and they scored, kicked a field goal, and then scored a touchdown. And all of a sudden, it's 24-10, and it's still the third quarter. And I grew up always fearing, a blown lead. The worst thing that could happen to my team is to have a big lead and blow it and lose the game. And certainly you didn't want to see that happen in a Super Bowl. So after that, Buffalo scored their 10 points. The Redskins got the ball, and they drove 80 yards down the field for the touchdown that put them back ahead 31-10 and put them back in control of the game. And the ending play on that drive was the 30-yard touchdown pass to Gary Clark. So that's to me, that's the most memorable play of the game, because it was in my end zone. So I was, right there looking down on it when it happened. So yeah.
What was your attire? So,
pardon me?
What were you wearing? So if we do see the game, we probably, if we kind of see the recap.
Well, you're not going to believe this, but I'm a typical sports fan. I believe in jinxes, and you don't wash your socks if you're on a winning streak or whatever. But I could not wear Redskin gear to a Redskin game. It felt like at some point when I had been going to games, if I wore Redskin hat or shirt or jacket or anything, it seemed like they would lose. So I didn't wear anything Redskin for that Super Bowl. In fact, because we were going to Minneapolis, I wore the warmest coat I could wear, and it happened to be royal blue, which is the Buffalo Bills color. It's one of their colors. And it is their main color. Is that blue. So a lot of people, even the people I was with at the airport to go to the game, thought I was rooting for Buffalo. And I had to tell them, no, I'm a Redskin fan, but I want them to win, so I can't wear Redskin gear. So basically I wore very generic clothing for the game, and then I wore that blue heavy coat to keep myself from freezing outside. And there were a lot of people there who thought I was probably a Buffalo fan. Whatever. The one thing I remember, especially when I watched the game last night and they were doing the pregame introductions, man, I would say 2/3 of the people at that game were Buffalo fans. I mean, it was very obvious that, when our team was introduced, the boos almost overwhelmed the cheers.
Wow.
And then when the Buffalo team was introduced, it was just, tremendous cheering for them. So we were definitely up against it crowd wise. And I don't know how that happened. I guess Buffalo fans were a little more, I don't know.
They travel.
They're definitely one of those rabid fan bases.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And this was like their heyday. I mean, this was as good as Buffalo ever was, other than back in the AFL when they won a couple of championships in the 60s. But once the merger happened, Buffalo pretty much fell into just mediocrity for the most part until they had that run of 4 straight years in the Super Bowl. So one of my other memories, the one memory I have from being out on the concourse level inside the stadium, the biggest crowd I saw gathered around anything or anybody was for Muhammad Ali. He was at the Super Bowl, and when he appeared, huge throng of people, just flocked to him. And I couldn't get close enough to him to get, anywhere near like shaking his hand or, slapping him on the back or anything like that. But I could barely see him through the throng of people that were all just surrounding him. I mean, he's just the most charismatic guy, and, wherever he is, people want to be there with him. So that was one of my memories, before the game.
Yeah.
So.
Do you remember what you eat? Or?
Yeah. That's the most important question of the day. What did you eat during the game?
What did I eat?
Yes.
Just regular stadium food. I don't remember Minneapolis having anything particularly special.
Yeah.
I don't know that Minneapolis is known for anything in particular. It's not like I, had a hoagie or, a cheesesteak or something like that. I just had, I had to guess, I don't remember, but I'm sure I just had some hot dogs and some soft drinks. So, yeah.
So we all remember Whitney Houston from the year before, but I do not remember who sang the national anthem for that game.
Well, it's funny because this ties into one of the famous stories from that game. The pregame, the national anthem was sung by oh God, now I can't think of his name. Something Junior, a famous singer who I guess had a famous father who was a singer. Something Junior.
I gotta look it up.
Yeah. I can't think of his name. Well, anyway, you all remember how the first couple of plays for Buffalo, they put their backup runner in the game because Thurman Thomas could not find his helmet.
Kenneth Davis. That was the running back. The backup running back was Kenneth Davis.
Yeah, Kenneth Davis had to go in for the first couple of plays because Thurman Thomas couldn't find his helmet. Well, it turned out that the band that was
Harry Connick Jr.?
Harry Connick Jr. He sang the national anthem. Well, anyway, apparently his people in his band needed the space or thought they needed the space where Thurman Thomas had put his helmet. And so they moved his helmet. So when he went looking for it, he couldn't find it. And people had to go searching up and down their sideline before somebody finally found his helmet to go. But, it wasn't, everyone says Thurman Thomas was just so, careless and lackadaisical or whatever, typical of the Bills back then. That's what you say when a team loses 4 straight Super Bowls is, somehow it's because, they don't care or they're just careless about things and they don't pay close attention to details and all that. No, Thurman Thomas put his helmet where he knew where it was, but somebody moved it. Somebody from Harry Connick's band moved the helmet. And so yeah, that's why he ended up missing the first 2 plays of the game. And one of them, I don't know if you guys ever saw the ESPN documentary, The 4 Falls of Buffalo, about those 4 Buffalo teams that went to the Super Bowl. They pointed out the second play of the game for Buffalo, when Thomas was still looking for his helmet, they ran a play, and Kenneth Davis ran the wrong way on the play.
I remember that.
Wrong way, and so Kelly had to just kind of roll out to the right and just, get what he could going up the middle. And they pointed out during this documentary what a huge hole there was on that play. Kelly gained like 5 or 6 yards, just kind of stumbling forward. And, Thomas says, geez, if I'd been in there and run that play, we could have gone, maybe all the way. We could have run it in for a touchdown. So anyway, so Harry Connick was the national anthem singer that day, and he helped the Redskins in his own way to get off to a good start.
Yeah, and people the younger people these days, they don't know what a successful Redskins team looks like. Most people in this area, this being such a transient area now, people weren't born here, so you didn't grow up with the success the team had. But hopefully here next Wednesday, they can start a new legacy with a new name, and build a something for these new fans to remember. What's your opinion on what the name is going to be? What are you thinking, or what are you leaning towards?
It seems to me, I mean, the word on the street seems to be now that the leader in the clubhouse is going to be Commanders. And I'm kind of, I don't know if I would say I'm resigning myself to that name. It's not a bad name,
It's a bad name. Come on, Tim.
I hate it.
That name is that name is
I can see down the road eventually, when the broadcaster is saying, Washington Commanders
touchdown
and Commanders have taken control of the game, and it's an okay name. At least it's a name that exudes, power and command, control or whatever. So
I can just see the jokes coming if they don't win.
Pardon me?
I can see the jokes coming when they don't win. They didn't command the football. They didn't command the respect of this.
Let's go commies.
There were a lot of names that, what did you say?
Let's go commies.
Wow. Okay. I mean, to be honest, there are a lot worse names that I heard.
Wizards.
Wizards,
about. See, I never really hated the name Wizards either. I saw no need to change the name.
Yeah.
I mean, I saw a lot less need to change Bullets than I did to change Redskins.
Agreed.
Because, but and there was a flow to the name, the WW, Washington Wizards, and if you think of it the right way, basketball wizards, wizards with the ball. I never had a problem with that name. And I will get used to the name Commanders. If you had to change it to my preference all along, and apparently it was never going to fly because it gives off the impression of war. But I always liked the name Warhawks, which, apparently I found out there's actually a missile called a Warhawk missile. So there may have been some copyright issues with that. But I like that. And the only team I know of anywhere that had that name was Madison High School in Vienna, Virginia. Mm-hmm. Their nickname is the Warhawks. Yeah. And I always liked that name. And, again, it would have been a WW, Washington Warhawks. But again, when you say war in this politically correct age, people are going to have a problem with that. So I'm glad they didn't pick Hogs, because I didn't want a name that only pertained to like a 10-year period in the history of the franchise.
Still could be.
I mean, sure, because of the whole Groundhog Day, announcement, people are saying that might be why they picked that day to announce it, because they're going to call themselves the Hogs.
I think they may pull an okey doke, because I
have that feeling too.
Yeah, because it's because things are going on Reddit, and my friend forwarded me something. This is like the name and in the server. I'm like, you do know they can take just a picture of that and manipulate whatever they want in this day and age. So I think they're pulling an okey doke, but I just like Sentinels, man, because it represents the soldier from the Tomb of the Unknown who guards it. So it's almost like you're giving homage to all the military guys.
What was that name?
The Sentinel. The Sentinels.
Oh. So the Washington Sentinels.
Yeah, so the Sentinels, that's the name of the guards who guard the Tomb of the Unknown.
I don't think that flows as well as other names, because it's hard to say the word. Sentinels is not an easy thing to flow off your tongue. So I don't know. I mean, to be honest, I've never even heard anyone mention that as one of the finalists. So it seems like
one of the early favorites.
Commanders, Admirals, or Hogs of some sort, Warhogs or some kind of Hogs.
Like Renegades.
Renegades?
Yeah, Renegades was one of them.
Sentinels was one. That was one of the ones. Sentinels was on that list with Renegades and, those early favorites, Red Hawks, Red Tails.
Is there a team, or was there a team called the Renegades, though?
The Washington.
Seems to me like that name sounds familiar.
That name sounds familiar.
Yeah.
Washington Renegades.
I know there was a Washington Warthogs back in the good old days of indoor soccer.
I remember
but
that too.
It could be a lacrosse team, I think. I think it's a lacrosse.
I think you're right. That sounds right.
I think it's I think it's a lacrosse team in New York. I think the professional lacrosse, I think it's a or something, but
another name I would have liked, but it has an unfortunate association with it, would have simply been the Washington Generals. I would have liked that name, but problem is that name is associated with the team that lost to the Globetrotters 98% of the time. Yeah. So, there would be a lot of jokes there about, us being just perennial losers. So,
but you know what, though? As long, the way I see it is this. It's a new chapter in the team's name. It's a new chapter. I mean, I'm always going to be a fan. I mean, I was on the cusp because I grew up in the 80s and the 90s, and I know what the tradition is. What they need to do, it's not about the name. I mean, yes, it's something was special with us. That's always going to be with us. Old heads, we'll cherish that name to the day we leave this earth. But at the same time, it's not about what was special about it. It was what the culture was special. That's why the name became so prominent, is because the way the culture was in that environment. And that's why that name sounds so much like it gave it so much oomph, is because of the culture that was brought on to the team. And now it's hard to kind of separate the two, Now it's a whole new thing. But the problem is, if you don't bring a winning culture to the new name, it's going to be the same team with the same outcome. So as long as, because I've been hearing all the old school heads talking, and Julie Donaldson did a great interview with Brad Edwards and Gary Clark and Brian Mitchell. And he was like, we loved to play for the coach, which was Gibbs, and we loved the fans. And they had old school, the older players who came in through the, who taught them and they taught them, and it kind of almost like a domino effect. They're saying that needs to come back into the organization so that the younger players can understand what history this team brings. Because in Washington, before all this debacle happened, they were one of the best franchises in the league. When you played them, they knew you're going to be in a slobber knocker, and you're going to it's going to be a tough game. That kind of intensity and that kind of culture in this needs to come back somehow, but we're not the owner. So.
Right.
Unfortunate, but.
Yeah, unfortunately, part of the problem with building that culture and having those players that, can talk to younger, the veterans that can talk to the younger players. We're talking back then about veterans who had been with the team for 10 years or more. Right. And in this era, and there was no major free agency back then. And now it's hard to keep your best players for more than 4 or 5 years at the most, and then you have to pick, after that, you have to pick and choose which of our stars are we going to pay the big money to keep, and which ones are we going to have to let move on. And so you don't have that as big a core of veterans who, and of course, with this team, we don't have any core veterans that have been around winning. So,
Did free agency start
kind of build that. The one thing I'm happy about is at least the Redskins seem to be attempting to do things the way they're supposed to be done now, as far as having a real front office. You have a real team president, you have a real general manager, you have a coach who is actually respected by most of the players, and who seems focused on building a culture that can lead to winning. So we seem to have the right pieces in place, or at least good pieces in place compared to what we've had in the past. So hopefully with this name change, we can, it will be in effect turning the page to a new generation of fans who, don't want to sit there spending the rest of their lives, if you're as old as we are, reminiscing.
We're still young. We are still young.
Yeah. Do you remember 91?
I do remember 91. I remember 88.
So that makes you old compared to a lot of Redskin fans today. If you're under the age of 35, you probably aren't going to remember the 91 team. So, we need to give the younger fans something to hang their hat on going forward. When I became a Redskin fan, and started watching football in 1970. At that point, the Redskins had not played a postseason game. They had not been to the playoffs in 25 years. So if you look at the last 30 years, while it's been dismal compared to the Super Bowl years, we've still made the playoffs 5 or 6 times during that era, since Gibbs retired the first time. So it's been depressing for those of us who remember the championship years. But, imagine being a Redskin fan between 1946 and 1970. I mean, that was a total dry spell, nothing. They had 2 winning seasons in that 25 years.
Until George Allen came in.
When I became a fan, George Allen came in, and he created a winning atmosphere and a winning culture, and losing was no longer acceptable after he came to Washington. And then Gibbs followed up a few years after he left, and he finished what George Allen had started. He got us over the finish line to 3 Super Bowl championships. So these people today, they're looking for championships, like I was looking for a championship when I first became a fan.
So we just got to the 4-minute mark here. We've got just under 4 minutes to go. I want to kick a question to you real quick. Completely off topic. What is wrong with the Wizards?
Who are you asking?
You.
Me? Well, I'm always asking you that. You know,
so I want to know what you
text
think.
each other, but I mean, ever since that 10-3 start, which clearly now was a mirage. I mean, we clearly were not as good as that 10-3 start made us look. You know, what are we, like 13-22 since then? We're 9 games under 500, and now overall we're 2 games under 500. Yeah, I'm not ready to give up on Unseld, you know, so quickly. I mean, he's been here less than a year, and he did seem to develop some kind of I can't think of the word I'm looking for. He got them to care about playing defense. Certainly early in the season, and even since then, you know, I think our losing is probably, if you look at all the games we've lost since then, I'm guessing more of the losses are due to our lack of offense than to our horrendous defense. I don't think our defense has sunk to the levels that it was at, you know, 2 or 3 years ago, because the previous coach just didn't emphasize defense at all. So at least Unseld seems to be trying to develop a defensive emphasis for the team. And maybe, you know, bottom line is, going into the season, people didn't have real high hopes or expectations for this team. At best, they thought we might be a 500 team and maybe sneak into the playoffs. And at this point, if that's what happens, you know, people would have to be happy with it, because the way we're going right now, the playoffs may be, you know, end up being a lost cause. So they just have to, you know, they got to keep working on their roster until they get all the, you know, get the chemistry to have a real winning team.
You think the pieces are there?
Pardon me?
You think?
Do I think the pieces are there right now?
Yes.
I think Bradley Beal's going to have to go. I don't think he's the guy you want to be your team leader for a championship caliber team. And if they can get some decent talent in return, it seems like we got some decent talent for Westbrook when we traded him. You know, so we may have to do the same thing, and we may have to suffer through a year or two of not making the playoffs so we can get draft choices. And we've got to hit on our draft choices. I mean, you know, we just never seem to get the Dirk Nowitzkis or the, you know, those middle of the first round picks that turn into all-stars. You know, we pick higher than that, and we don't get all-stars with our picks.
Yeah.
So, you know,
we've got about 20 seconds to go.
Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to jump in so I could thank you for joining us. It was nice to reminisce about the glory years, and I appreciate you taking the time to jump in with us. And if you ever want to do it again sometime, just let us know. We record every Saturday. And
well, yeah, next week we'll know what the team name is. Maybe we could do an hour on that.
I know, right?
Yeah. So.
All right. Well, I thank you again, and we are the Talking Hats, and we appreciate y'all joining us. We'll pick things up and get back into whatever we were talking about before. And